Hello, you're listening to Chai Across Generations, a podcast to understand and maybe even bridge the gap between generations of South Asians. This is episode 5, all about chai. This is Nikil.
And this is Shankar. Nikil, how are you doing?
I am excellent today, Shankar. I have my chai and I'm ready to go. How are you?
I'm ready to go as well. So, look, we teased in that last episode that we will be talking about chai and coffee this week. And we're here to deliver good on our promise.
Yes, we wanted to do something a little lighter and more fun this week since we started out with some heavier topics like dating and the good life. This topic was recommended by one of our listeners, so thank you all for engaging.
Right. And, we explored a little bit of that across generations piece of our title. And I think we really need to do justice to the first word, which is chai.
And we've brought in some experts this time. 2 people who have easily had thousands of cups of chai in their lifetimes. That's right, we've brought in my parents. You'll hear from my mom first, and then from my dad later in the episode on the topic of what chai means to them, and we'll jump into our discussion in the middle.
So let's begin with our first guest.
Hi everyone and namaste. I am Nikil's mom. I'm happy and proud to introduce myself as Nikil's mom. What does chai means to you? Chai means connecting with people and cherishing the memories that you have with them. I love chai. If you want me to your friend, invite me chai anytime. One of my fondest memory is my mom getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning when I was young. She would milk the cow by herself. She would boil the fresh whole milk, then she would make tea for us every day. I felt loved and cared for. Nowadays, my days start with tea, and I also like to have tea in the evenings. I used to drink chai many times and anytime. My favorite chai is Assam tea with cardamom, ginger and honey. It has the best flavor I have ever tasted. What is your fond memory when you think of chai?
Thanks to my mom for sharing that story and sharing what chai means to her. Shankar, she asked us what our fondest memory is of chai, so I'd love to start our discussion there. Mine actually happened quite recently with my mom. Now that you and our listeners have all met her, you know she's a big fan of chai. And she was staying with me the other day, and I woke up a little bit earlier. I like making chai in the mornings. So I made chai, and I woke her up probably 5 minutes before the chai was ready. And so she got out of bed, came into the kitchen, and there was a cup of chai there. And I could see in her eyes how much it kind of meant to her. And as she talks about, it's this feeling of being cared for and connection. I think I've maybe inherited that from her. But it was a nice way for us to connect. And she actually called my dad after that and asked him why he doesn't make chai for her in the mornings as much as she would like. So I did not mean to get my dad in trouble there, but I may have inadvertently done that. But that has been one of my recent fond memories with chai. What's one of your fond memories with chai?
Oh, thanks for sharing that story, Nikhil. It's very touching. And as for my memories, I think I first got introduced to chai in Delhi, in fact, when my family moved there. Mama used to make chai in the afternoons, and in Delhi it's a very common tradition. It's in the winter afternoons particularly. Sun comes out and you would see everyone out on their balcony. The ladies would be knitting sweaters and their cup of chai next to them. And so that brings back some really fond memories. In fact, once in our family, we read about Tibetan chai and how they use yak butter. And being very adventurous, we thought we could use almond butter, which is, of course, not the same thing. The chai tasted pretty weird that day. But chai has always been a very central part of that kind of coming together of the family, for sure. Especially since we moved to the north and spent some time in Delhi. And after I went to my undergraduate in Bombay, it was still a theme of going to the staff canteen with my friends between classes, sometimes at the expense of certain boring classes as well. To go and have a cup of chai at the staff canteen was a ritual, which I still really fondly cherish those memories. And now, full circle, my mom's in hospice and she's in a nursing home. And one of the things she really likes is when I brew her favorite chai, take it in a thermos and go there and we sit down. And even though she can only drink about half a cup now, we just cherish that moment together and maybe solve the crossword or read her some poetry. She asked me that she wanted to hear some of her favorite poems again, and I'll probably be doing that later this week. Yeah, so it's chai has been that sort of constant element in so many of our interactions, coming full circle.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. It's such a beautiful visual to picture you and your mom sipping some chai and doing the crossword together. It is interesting, right? Chai is kind of central to both of our relationships to our mothers and creates these moments where we can come together, connect, and talk.
Yeah.
In the story I was sharing, my mom and I also chatted over that cup of chai and had a good time just hanging out. Chai is a vibe, I guess.
Yeah.
If there's no other way to say it, it's a vibe, and it sets the tone for conversation. And it's funny because for me, it wasn't always that way. I have come to like it more and more as I've grown up. And as a kid, I would drink Boost or Horlicks or any one of the other kind of sugary Indian drinks you'd get in my household. But as I got older and into my teens, chai became the drink. And I actually remember a story where my family was hanging out with some family friends over a trip, and there were 4 kids, and a lot of chai was being made in a house with 2 families. But sometimes us kids would want more chai. So we came up with this little trick where we would just, instead of asking for chai, we would say, "Did someone say tea?" And just let that kind of hang in the air. And more times than not, one of our parents would hear that and say, "Oh yeah, maybe it's time for tea." And they would make some chai. So that's another, I guess, fond memory that I have of it. And just shows, right? It's after we would when we would have chai in that situation, we would sit down and chat between our 2 families and between the kids and the parents. So I'm just seeing this big theme of kind of bonding and connection coming through in both of our stories.
Yeah, so touching. It's also so Indian to not ask for chai directly, but to say, "Did someone say chai?"
Yes, so true.
Now, I do have to bring out the big elephant in the room, which is
Okay.
coming from South India. Coffee is king. I hope you know that.
Here we go.
Chai is the new fad in a generational sense. But yeah, growing up in South India, for me, coffee was the staple drink in every household that we knew, and chai was actually kind of a secondary option for if you were feeling ill or somebody had some medical reason that they couldn't drink coffee. That's kind of how I saw it in those days. And as a rule, when I was growing up, you always ordered coffee in South India and tea in North India because the opposites were execrable. They were horrible. North Indian coffee would never appeal to a South Indian. And South Indian tea was not something that most North Indians would, take a sip of. But it's interesting. I think with more travel, we've all grown to appreciate the great things about different parts of India and different parts of the culture, and learn to, prepare them to the highest standard and enjoy them. And in that context of coffee, I wanted to share with you a little extract from this book, which I've really enjoyed. It's called My Dateless Diary.
Ooh, okay.
By
Let's hear it.
Yeah, and it's by R.K. Narayan. And R.K. Narayan is the brother of R.K. Lakshman, who's a famous cartoonist. And those of us who grew up in India remember his cartoons used to appear in the Times of India. And he was extremely popular. And R.K. Narayan has this book, My Dateless Diary, under which the subtitle is An American Journey. So it talks about his coming to America and his experiences there. I'll just read a little short bit because I think it encapsulates how fanatical South Indians are about coffee and how it should be made. So
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you. So R.K. Narayan is somewhere in America here. He's in New York. He's at a cafeteria, I believe, and it starts off. It begins somewhere in the middle of the first chapter. I picked up my breakfast and assembled it with deftness, and had on the whole acquired so much smartness that when I approached coffee and was asked, black or white? Neither, I said haughtily. The server looked up rather puzzled. What do you mean? He asked. I want it neither black or white, but brown, which ought to be the color of honest coffee. That's how we make it in South India, where devotees of perfection in coffee assemble from all over the world. So I just thought that is very funny. The whole chapter is I highly recommend it to readers if they'd like to go and read the whole thing. He's hilarious. But
Right. I can tell you through our first several episodes, our listeners love your book recommendations. So we can add this to the list. I definitely want to check out that book myself. It's funny, growing up, chai was the default drink in my South Indian household when I would go back to visit family. And maybe that speaks to the shift, right? With chai being a more recent development. Coffee, I like coffee, but it's a lot of caffeine. So maybe that's why it wasn't as popular. It became less popular in my family's household. And just thinking about that passage to brown, there is a certain tinge of brown that is perfect, right? And we are always searching for that perfect brown chai or coffee. I started making chai in the last couple of years, and it's honestly been a way to rediscover the culture. And especially after going to my cousin's wedding last year and coming back, I started making it basically every morning. So I have a bit of a ritual now where, time permitting, most mornings I will make my breakfast and make chai alongside the rest of my breakfast. And I'll try to listen to some Tamil music or Indian music and make the chai in search of that perfect brown color. And there's something so almost spiritual about it. Because I feel like when I'm going through that act and making the chai, and I've seen my mom and my grandmother and a ton of family members make it, I feel like I'm connecting to them, even if they're half a world away, as most of my extended family is. And it maybe gives me some purpose, actually, when I start the day, and feels a little less isolated, but more as if, hey, this is something we all connect on, we all love, and frankly, we would be making together if we were in the same room. Right. So I like that, and it has really deepened just how I think about family and connection. And it's a nice bonus that, I can make chai when my mom comes over and my dad comes over as well, and create a little space for that conversation.
Nice. Yeah, I really liked the ritual aspect that you point out. And I think there's a lot of depth in that. Shared rituals are how we remember connection, create connection, build connection. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of a big tool, right? As we think about bridging the gap between generations.
Right.
That really resonates with me and is one of the big reasons it's in the title of this podcast. These conversations will probably happen over a cup of chai or coffee or something else.
Right. I'm with you in also having moved away from coffee into chai. So although brought up in South India and loving coffee and being a coffee fanatic for many years, I used to get my beans and grind them right before brewing it, and that's the right way to do it, etc. But I do agree with you that chai is a lot gentler and suits my personality more now. So I'm a convert. And my daughter's gotten to it as well. So whenever she's home, we know that right around 3:30 in the afternoon is when we'll both look at each other and be ready for that cuppa. And she's also joined me on the coffee adventures. So when we went to India, it has also been a way for her to reconnect with Indian culture, the very same way that you mentioned that reconnection. And in India, in the south of India, there is a particular type of coffee called Kumbakonam degree coffee. And we went in search of the perfect cup of Kumbakonam degree coffee. It's like the holy grail. It's a special type of coffee that's served in brass tumblers, the tumblers. And we had a very nice journey through Kumbakonam trying to find the best Kumbakonam degree coffee. So that is a nice adventure for her as well, going back into our culture and doing that together. And the great generational rift between Shivani and me centers around how long to brew the chai. So I've brought her up that it is 3 minutes and 5 seconds, but she disagrees and will stop it at 3 minutes. And this is an ongoing source of great difficulty and disagreement. And I just don't know how this will end, Nikil.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good discussion. I think the listeners want to know how we make our chai. So, Shankar, you're saying after you put in the tea, you put in the water, the tea, do you put in any spices as well?
Oh, this reminds me. I just have to share this extremely funny joke because the order of adding the ingredients is so important, right? So the first time I made tea, I didn't even know how tea was made, and you will laugh when when you listen to this. I set the pan, heated it up, and I added the sugar first.
Oh no, that comes at the end.
And naturally it caramelized and it was a disaster. And we spent a good amount of time scrubbing that pan out. But so the order is important. I agree. I learned it the hard way.
Very important. Yes.
Now back to you.
Yeah, no, I think for me, I start boiling the water, and then you add the tea and some spices or other accessories, I guess, to it. I go with the ginger and cardamom as my main two that I crush and put in. So it's interesting you say the generational lift is 3 versus 3 minutes and 5 seconds. For me, if I'm making a cup for myself, I'll do 3 minutes. If I'm making more than one cup, I'll do 5 minutes. So we might have a bigger generational rift even than what you and Shivani have. And then once it comes to a boil, that's when I add the milk and the sugar. And I actually let it come to a boil 2 more times after that. So boil, let it simmer, then boil. With the trick I picked up from some family. So that is kind of what I use. But I'm curious how you do yours and how you and Shivani navigate this big rift between you.
Well, when I first looked at your recipe, I was really worried because you didn't have the order of the ingredients listed. And if you were the type who boils your milk in the water first and then adds the tea, then Shivani and I might have had a very, very difficult time in continuing this podcast. It's just... I'm so glad.
I get it. I would totally get it. You can't add the milk first. Yeah, that can't happen.
I heaved such a big sigh of relief when I knew that you had the order right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And how do you... I am just curious, actually. So with you and Shivani and do you just choose, okay, I'm going to make it this time, so you're going to have to deal with 3 minutes, or do you negotiate with each other in those situations?
I try to trust her that she will end up making a good cup of chai. Her defense is that she measures out a little less water than I do, and so she gets away with 3. And we are both pretty supportive. As you know, the quality of chai, even though we aim for perfection, it varies ever so slightly around that. So right. A good part of the drinking is a discussion of how did it come out today? Was it strong enough? Was the milk just right? Was there too much milk? So there's a certain
that's a great point. Yeah.
Cadence to that conversation.
Yes, I agree. It's a great point. Also, the ratio of water to milk, right? 2/3 to 1/3. you could do 3/4 to 1/4, and you're kind of eyeballing
It
it,
is.
so it changes. But you're right, that is almost the first conversation topic when we sit down to chat is, how's the chai? Is it the right proportion of water and milk? Is it the right amount of sugar? Is it the right tinge of brown? These are important questions.
Very important. And you build that family connection by accepting every form of chai that comes out together, right?
Yeah, that's true. Everyone has their own kind of personality with it, or their own distinct style. Um, well, the other thing that this conversation makes me think of is that just chai as a gateway into conversation, right?
Yeah.
And a table setter for conversation. And frankly, it's one of the reasons why we wanted to use it in the title of this podcast, right? I think I envisioned, and I imagine you also envisioned, a lot of these conversations we want our audience to have, or are hoping our audience will start to have with the other generation around chai or something else. But the power of sitting down and sitting with someone and having your cup of chai or coffee it's unlike anything else, honestly, when it comes to having these discussions, right, with other people.
Absolutely. And don't we have something that your father has to say about this, Nick?
Yes, so you all heard from my mom earlier in the episode, and now we're going to kind of bookend it with some thoughts from my dad, who was very kind enough to share his perspective as well on what chai is, and I think he would agree that it is a really good way to bring people together. So let's hear from my dad now. So Appa, what does chai mean to you?
Hi, Nikil. That's a good question. It sounds simple, but has a deeper meaning, I think. Chai may mean different things to different people at different times. When I think about chai, it's not just a simple drink. I take it as a symbolism of personal reflection, connection with friends and family, and to reflect some important moments and memories in life. When I drink chai on my own, I feel relaxed and can usually get my mind out of the many stresses in life. When I get a headache, I drink chai to relieve that headache, and that really works. When someone offers chai, that means they're reaching out to you. They want to be friendly. They want to know you. And they want to have a conversation with you. Same thing when someone accepts that chai. That means they're accepting of your acquaintance. They want to get closer to you and want to know you more. In the family or in the community with friends, drinking chai together means connecting people with each other so that they can have casual conversations, which can be also meaningful and significant in many ways, from reminiscing memories, recollecting events, and also many times planning for the future happens over a relaxing chai time. You can go deeper than that. In history, peace talks between world leaders have happened over chai or similar drink or food, and those things will continue to happen. We all know that technology changes and evolves fast in such a rapid pace that we will have more robust artificial intelligence before we realize it. But all of that technology cannot change the fundamental human connection over chai. Nikil, food and drink is always important for human connections. And chai is just a symbol of that. It could be any other drink. Could be coffee, could be beer. But when people come together over chai or a drink or food, then they're connecting with each other and having a good time with casual conversations, or just having fun and relaxing, or they're involved in deeper, meaningful conversation that leads to solving problems and even peace over war. So, Nikil, you see, chai is not that simple as it seems on the surface. It sounds simple in the literal sense, but really it has a deeper meaning in our lives.
That's beautiful. Thanks, Bob. Thanks to my mom and dad for coming on this week and sharing their wisdom. Well, Shankar, I don't think I could have said it any better than that as we wrap up this episode.
Yes, I agree. But I'm still looking forward to your peace offering next week.
Don't worry, I won't let you down on that one. And to our listeners, follow us on Instagram at Chai Across Generations, or email us with your comments, questions, or discussion topics at chaiacrossgenerations@gmail.com.
If you like what you've heard, subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Our intro music is our own homemade rendition of a classic blues tune, Have a Good Time by Big Walter Horton.
Thanks, everyone. See you all next time.